very much. That is truly very uplifting. Questions? Or clean jokes? The question was
assuming there's not much,
yeah.
assuming there's not much momentum or movement, what's your prognosis? I mean, what you know, it's assuming the status quo is this just stays the same mess. What is your prognosis about what will happen organically, so to speak?
The outlook is grim. People say, you know, look, take it another way. We have spent so many years being steeped in this hot sauce of a one-sided presentation that Americans just really don't know. All we have to do is just educate the population. Well, hell, there's a couple of weeks' worth right there. You know. Try it this way. The United States is going to change things in Afghanistan. We are going to make that country into a modern, functioning democracy, right? Full disclosure, I lecture on luxury cruise ships. It's a dirty job, ladies and gentlemen, but somebody has to do it. And my wife and I have sailed the world on these nice boats. They force you to eat 12 meals a day. You know, and anyway. I had somebody jump up in the middle of one of my lectures once, a woman who screamed. She screamed. She said, I hate Muslims. I detest Muslims. I said, madam, will you tell us why? She said, yes. All Muslims know is murder, bloodshed, terrorism, killing. And I said, so that's what's been going on in Northern Ireland. I never agreed. And now I understand World War II and the Holocaust. It's those Muslims. And she says, Muslims kill other Muslims. And I said, the Civil War, my God, they're everywhere. I said, you are suffering from terminal bigotry. Agnostics know how to kill, atheists know how to kill, Buddhists know how to kill, Jews know how to kill, Christians know how to kill, everybody knows how to kill. And how do you talk people out of this? We've been at it for a long time, it hasn't worked yet. What I'm afraid of, what I would like to see is for America to stop being seen as the facilitator of what's happening to the Palestinians. The Israelis have the right, I say this unequivocally, to do whatever they damn well please. But I don't like what's happening to my country because of that relationship. But you can't change things here. It just takes too damn long. Because you're going to have to kill the fascination with celebrities. You know, I love when my wife and I go to the supermarket and we come out to checkout and it says, Bruce and Gladys have broken up. Oh my God, who the hell are Bruce and Gladys? And why should I care? But those magazines attract an awful lot of attention. So my prognosis is it ain't going to get much better in the short run unless something really catastrophic happens.
I guess I was thinking of the demographics. You know?
Listen, that's an excellent point. Some of you may know, thank you, sir, that knowledgeable individuals like Shimon Peres, the president of Israel, Ehud Barak and Ehud Olmert, two of whom are former prime ministers, have publicly stated that Israel's current course is going to lead to one of three disasters. One of three. Unless they separate Palestine into a viable, separate state, either they're going to become an apartheid state in which there will be an underclass where the Palestinians will live as underclass, or they'll have a unitary state in which it won't be predominantly Jewish, it will be a Jewish state anymore. Or else the Muslims will eventually outnumber them because of the birth rate and they'll become themselves the minority. So the only logical course of action, and what the hell does logic have to do with any of this, is to create a separate, viable Palestinian state, which they've never offered anything even resembling. It's always fun talking to folks like, can I digress for just a moment? As a Woodrow Wilson visiting fellow, I've gone out to various college campuses to talk. And I was in one up in central Michigan. And yes, ma'am, you should. And they said, okay, Thursday morning, early, you're speaking to a language class. I said, well, what? He said, well, anybody studying languages has to take this course. It's on linguistics. I said, linguistics. and it's early in the morning. I said, well, why am I speaking to that class? And the professor wanted to. So I came in, it was early in the morning, it sure was. And everybody was sitting around, not only half asleep, but very disinterested in my presentation. So I said to them, you know, college has changed so much since I went there. It's difficult to imagine how you kids live your lives today at college. I said, for example, just ask a question. How many of you in the last 72 hours have engaged in a post-labial fricative? Man, did I have their attention. And I said, you all know what a post-labial fricative is. I said, it's called a Bronx cheer. That's a post-labial fricative. I said, you're in a linguistics class, and you don't know that? Well, I have them with me after that. But you've got to get the people's attention. And we don't have a mechanism for doing that. Israel is on the path to its own destruction. It's not the first time that that's happened to countries. We've made a couple of steps in that direction ourselves. But I don't see anything good coming out of this as long as their parliamentary system gives their right-wing, what's the polite phrase, nutcases, serious control over what the government can and cannot do. Abetted by the lobby in this country. Itself aided by the people who don't know nothing. On the ships, I asked the audience, they're older people. To anybody in the room who's over 65 and who is perfectly comfortable using all the capabilities of a modern cell phone, raise your hand. Nobody. Do your parents use cell phone? Yeah, your parents would, okay. But a cell phone is a piece of hardware. You can hold the damn thing in your hand, and it has a beautifully detailed instruction book that tells you exactly how to use it. And Americans are well-to-do, some of them very well-to-do. They're educated, some of them are very well. But older people don't use the cell phone because they're not used to it. They don't understand it. They're afraid of it. And the average senior citizen looks at a cell phone with the same level of comprehension with which a squid looks at a nuclear submarine. So we're going to have the Afghans become democratic. Are they well educated? No. Are they well off economically? No. Have they been anywhere? Have they done? No. And democracy is not a piece of hardware. You cannot hold it in your hand. There is no instruction book, ladies and gentlemen. So all the Afghanis have to do is elect a stable government, have it educate the population, give them a solid economic base, have them learn what democracy is, decide they want it, set up the party system, and this could take a month or more. And who the hell says they have to have a democracy? And you will make a free choice, right? Yeah, don't you? I'll make a free choice. By definition, you cannot impose democracy. Democracy comes this way, not that way. And imposed democracy is a dictatorship. You can't force people to have a democracy. And if they do try to have one, then the Americans come into play. And you may have seen the delegation of American Congress people from both parties who sent a message to the Afghani and to the Iraqi government saying, with your fledgling democracies, the first thing you must learn is the importance of power sharing. Just like we do, right? This is called dynamic hypocrisy again, folks. We can't teach them a hell of a lot. Who says they have to do it our way? Okay. Just 1 second, so I'll go right with you. I was on a program some years ago. I was in the studio in Washington, and there were 2 anchors up in New York, a left-wing wacko and a right-wing nutcase. You know how they balance these things. The right-winger was a woman, and she lost her patience with me. And even though we were a couple of 100 miles apart, she did this. She said, let's get one thing straight. Right now, Ambassador Peck. I said, Peck. She said, whatever. I said, we're getting along pretty nicely. She said, Iraq is going to have a constitution based on ours. They are going to have an American Constitution, face all contorted. And I said, you're right, and that is why our government has told the Iraqis forcefully, repetitively, they're only going to be allowed to have slavery for the first 4 years. And after 130 years, they must give the women a vote. Silence at the other end. Let me try this as a college audience and educated people. Raise your hand if you know in which year Americans, for the very first time, elected senators instead of having them chosen by state legislatures.
1920.
1913, 17th Amendment. We finally decided that, hey, let's give the people a voice here, because think of this. The founding persons, see how sensitive I am? The founding persons fixed it so we do not have a democracy. You don't get to vote for the president. You get to vote for me. I know who the president should be. I'm an elector. You, back in the days of the founding persons, you didn't own slaves or property. How the hell would you know who should be president? So they didn't give the right to choose senators to the people. I mean, the people. Ooh. Look what happens when you give the votes to people. I got to tell you, this is funny. My wife and I were in a city called Petropavlovsk. That's on the Kamchatka Peninsula in the Pacific Ocean, sticking down towards Japan. It's in Russia. Petropavlovsk means the city of Peter and Paul. Okay? And the guide, there's not a hell of a lot there to see. But anyway, the guide said, and now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm taking you to a special place. You will always remember a visit. From top this hill, you can see home in Sarapeta. That I remember. Question, sir.
I'm so happy to have been here tonight.
Me too.
And I had a question early on, which you proceeded to answer, but I thought I'd go ahead and say it anyway. You spoke about getting that phone call from someone that you didn't know about an organization that you never heard of. And I wondered immediately, how come? How come they called you? How come you responded? And your presentation has answered the question. You're a good man. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you. No, I like to think that the reason they called me is that I've had some exposure on this issue in a moderate way. I'm not an extremist in either direction, which is not necessarily good, but at least it's the way I am. So they had heard of me. And the reason that I went, the reason I accepted the invitation was because I'd spent all these years talking and writing documents and listening to people and explaining to people, and I wanted to do something tactile, something that had weight and occupied space, like taking those electric wheelchairs to the people in Gaza. I thought that would be a worthwhile activity. And I was very gratified that they did invite me, because I had a chance, partly because of that, I guess, to explain a lot of things to a lot of people. And now I have to tell you something that my wife would not forgive me for. I was on a radio call-in show shortly after I got back. And I was actually in a car driving from the airport in Minneapolis to the place where I was going to talk. And this man said, "Did you see the cringing, obsequious commentary of Vice President Biden today on the Charlie Rose show when he talked about the flotilla?" And because of my nature, I said, "No, I did not have a chance to see it. But I have heard through my intelligence contacts that the Israelis were so pleased with the tone and the content that they have authorized Vice President Biden from now on, whenever he meets Mr. Netanyahu, only has to kiss his ring." And the man came right back and says, "Does that depend upon where Bibi puts his hand?" And I said, "Let's not go there." See, I do have a sense of humor. And I've never heard from the Vice President's office. I think he missed that particular call-in show. I had another call-in once, forgive me, that I was doing the Earl and Jethro show down in Texas somewhere. Apparently they had tens of thousands of listeners. And this listener called in and he said, I got a question for you, Ambassador Peck. Can Muslims be democratic? And I said, sir, let me start answering your question by asking you a question. Can Christians eat meat on Friday? The answer, of course, is some can, some can't. But your question indicates that you think that Islam is monolithic. There's no such thing as a monolithic religion. Islam has not as many branches as the Christian church, which has 134 recognized subgroups, but they have all kinds of subgroups. Some can be very democratic, some will have a hard time doing it, because it is not monolithic, it's split up in all kinds of ways. And the guy said, well, thank you very much, I never knew that. Something else he never knew, I didn't have a chance to tell him. In my country, in our country, we always and only and exclusively speak of the Judeo-Christian tradition. But I'd like to point out to you that there are three Abrahamic faiths: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. One of the principal pillars of Christianity is Jesus Christ, who was recognized by the Muslims as a prophet, but not by the Jews. In the Quran, which some of you may have read, Gabriel comes to Mary and says, you will give birth to this child who will sit on the right hand of God on the day of judgment. That's interesting. And the first three books of the Torah are in the Quran. This is an Abrahamic faith. They have all of the prophets from the Old Testament, all of the prophets from the New Testament, and one more, Muhammad. So to speak of the Judeo-Christian tradition is intentionally designed to push the Muslims out the door, where those three religions are very closely linked. And in fact, there's more in common, in a sense, between Judaism and Islam than there is between Judaism and Christianity. Okay, I just throw that out for you to think about. It's worthwhile knowing. I see some questions in the back of the room. We'll get back to these. Okay. The presentation ends at 9:30, just so you know how much time you have. Hey, well, I appreciate that. You can see you off the stage. Go in the back, I see some. Why not? Hey, from now on, you pick the person, okay? Take me out of the silence.
A lot of U.S. foreign policy and foreign aid is based on like the spread of democracy and not giving to communist nations or to nations that the U.S. will feel could eventually be a threat to this country. So do you feel that in countries like Afghanistan, where we feel that we're starting to impose or we want them to have some sort of democracy, do you think that economic stability should come first, or should democracy come first, which would later on lead to economic stability?
That's a very powerful question too, young lady. I'm going off on a cruise next week, and I'm writing a new lecture for it called The U.S. and the New World Order. Subtitle is Nation Building. Whose job is it? We give money. We give more money to Israel than to any other country. In fact, we give Israel about half of what we give to everybody. And we laud it for being a democracy, but it isn't, because as you may know, there are more than 60 laws which discriminate against Palestinians in Israel. But this is a political issue. It isn't really an economic issue or a development issue. These things are political. In the case of both Afghanistan and Pakistan, we are busily engaged in destroying whatever they had, with very little chance of them being able to adopt anything that we want them to have. AID, if you know what AID is, the Agency for International Development, just put out for bid a $180 million contract to reform Iraq's civil service, 3 million employees, and it says in the call for bids, request for bids, that many people who work in the civil service in Iran are not fully qualified for their jobs. And these people must be gotten rid of, and we must also do all of the things that we've never been able to do here, we want them to do there. And this smacks a little bit of paternalism, you could call it, or stupidity, if you want to get right down to it, because that isn't going to work there. They have their own way of living. On Sunday, how many of you go to church on Sunday? Leave your church, gather a group of 10 co-parishioners, walk down the street 6 blocks, 2 blocks, we can't do that here, I guess. We have 3 blocks. Okay, so when do you get home? And walk into that other church and say, okay, from today on, we're going to worship our way. Okay? Is that going to work? Try something else. You got me started. Do I need this? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. When you get home, encourage your parents to select a family in the neighborhood and to call them up and say, look, starting tomorrow, for the next 2 months, 3 times a week, we're going to come over and explain to you how you're raising your children wrong. Okay? Now, after a half a dozen visits, you would sense that your welcome is beginning to erode. But you can accelerate this process dramatically if you stop on the way over and tell all the other neighbors how these people are raising their kids right. That will leave them, what's the French expression, pissed off. But we do that on an hourly basis with every country in the world. That's wrong, this is right, you gotta stop this, you gotta start that. Who in the hell are you to tell me how to run my country? When I was a boy in the Foreign Service, someone would say to the State Department spokesman, what is the State Department's reaction to the election in Bogota? They say, well, that's an internal matter. Yeah, it is. But now, we got 4 sheets of statement to make about the blood type, the religious preference, and all the sexual orientations of everybody in the world, and we think that that's all right. And folks, they do not like it. That is not what diplomacy is all about. You don't do it in public. These are sovereign nations, and you treat them in public as if you don't think so at cost. And our nation does it on a daily basis. Sri Lanka just changed its constitution, and the White House spokesman stood up and read a whole paragraph about how we think that's wrong. Hey, who asked you? They voted for it. You don't like it? Let me tell you what you can do with your objection in a sanitary way. Yes, ma'am, you're on. Oh,
I have a kind of more general question.
I can't hear you.
Today in my American foreign policy class, we talked about how the public opinion shapes the American foreign policy. So I see you talking, who belong to a more exclusive group of American public opinion. You have been quite critical of your country's policy in Arab-Israeli conflict and in other parts of the Middle East. So I would like to know to what extent your career as a diplomat has shaped these views, and if you believe that as a member of the public opinion, you can have an influence on the American foreign policy making.
Yes, you're so right, but it doesn't, none of you are old enough to remember Pogo. That wonderful political cartoon, you remember Pogo by Walt Kelly, a genius. At one point he had Deacon Mushrat, who was the politician in this comic strip. And he said, and I quote, "Hark, there go the people, and I must follow them, for I am their leader." This is a democracy, see? And the members of Congress are going to do what their people tell them they want them to do. And the most vociferous groups in our country do not push for Palestinian freedom or push for a more balanced approach in the Middle East. They push for, let's do things for Israel. So trying to change public opinion requires that the media, and I'm sorry to use that word right after mealtime, that the media do something to get the American people interested and aware. And they're not, for whatever reason. Our nation is deeply involved in television and personalities and sports and all the rest. That's what our country is focused on, not on what's happening abroad. When their attention is directed in that direction, they get the kind of information that those people on the flotilla were all savage, murdering killers. I said to, the other day, at the urging of my grown-up children, I looked at myself on YouTube. I was amazed. There's a whole lot of me on YouTube. And then what? I mean, I didn't really know that because who watches YouTube? Well, never mind. And there were two little snippets that I watched before I recoiled. One of them showed me making a talk in Crested Butte, Colorado, which has got to be one of the most beautiful places in the world. And I'm talking about making a lecture at the Defense Intelligence Agency, where I lecture fairly regularly. And during one of the breaks, I was talking to some people, and this Marine major walked up, and he was right off a recruiting poster. Tall, handsome, square jaw, clear-eyed kind of guy. And he said, I've had 3 tours in Iraq. I'm saying this on television. I've had 3 tours in Iraq, Mr. Ambassador, and I have never spoken to one single Iraqi who did not tell me that they hated Saddam Hussein, were glad we came, and hoped we would stay. I said, well, when you were talking with these people, were you armed and in uniform? He said, yes. Why? Oh, okay. I said, were you speaking to them directly? He said, no, I had a translator. I said, so what was the translator asking you? Well, my questions. Yeah, baby. You think it's extra hot today? Yeah, okay. He hates Saddam Hussein. Really, if you have to work, look, think about this. If tomorrow the governor of New Hampshire decides, okay, sir, now let me answer this question. The governor of New Hampshire decides he wants to upgrade the highway patrol. How likely is he to pick up the phone and call the governor of Mississippi and ask him to ask for a training team to come up and teach the guys up in New Hampshire how to do it? Yeah, okay. Even though they speak something resembling the same language. But we are going to train the Afghani police. You've got to be kidding. We're going to train the Afghani police without knowing anything about their history, their culture, their religion, their language. So you picture that Marine that I was just talking about. When the heat is on, you've got to step up to the plate. I think he's going to organize a barbecue. You got to put a tail on that man. Wouldn't he notice? Do you realize how tricky languages are? We talked about that earlier today. One of the great moments in American political history, Richard Nixon, who was at that time the vice president, went to the Moscow World's Fair where the Americans had built a modern house. And they had something called the kitchen debate, you remember? Right there in the kitchen. And it was an interesting moment in the relationships between those two countries. They got on the subject of communism versus capitalism. And Mr. Khrushchev said in Russian, "We will be present at your funeral." And the translator said, "We will bury you." It's the same concept, you see. Okay. But nobody in America paid attention until 3 years later at a conference in Geneva of UNESCO, United Nations Economic and Social Committee. The American representative, who was a woman, said, "A woman's work is never done." And the Frenchman translated it, "A woman never finishes her work." Well, that is the same thing, you see. What the hell it is. There was a big ruckus about that. That's not what I said. Yes, it is. You said she never finishes. Oh, well. The implication is that she can't finish. Okay, never mind, I don't need to explain it to you. You're all college. Am I speaking too fast for you? But getting the public interested in this is... There's a man named P.T. Barnum. There was a man named H.L. Mencken. I'm not sure which one of these people made this statement, but I think it's shatteringly, painfully true. One of them said, "No one ever has or ever will lose one single penny by underestimating the taste or the intelligence of the American people." And I'm sorry, but that is about right. Democracy is tough, especially if the electorate is not terribly well educated, terribly well informed.